Last summer, I moved into this small town, hoping for a fresh start after my breakup. I found a cheap 2-story building with character. The bricks were old, but I liked it. The town had a cozy feel with a small park and a vintage playground. I thought it would inspire my graphic design work. One evening, while sitting at my window, I saw flickering lights across the street. I figured it was just a lamp or kids having fun. But then, I heard strange humming coming from the apartment next door. I couldn't sleep that night. Every little noise made my heart race. It felt like someone was right behind the wall, whispering just out of reach. As days went on, things got worse. I started hearing muttered voices through the walls. They hissed and murmured like they were having a private conversation. I thought I saw shadows moving in the yard, but they were gone too quick to make sense of them. Maybe I was just imagining things. It was a new place, and the quiet made me uneasy. I chatted with some locals to see if they knew anything about my neighbors. Their reactions were odd. Their faces turned blank. "Oh, we don't know who lives next door," they said. I didn't understand why no one talked about them. A secret hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. Part of me wanted to dig deeper, but I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover anything. The voices got louder. Some nights, I woke up hearing the familiar hum and whispers. I could almost feel the shadows, like they were teasing me, sharing secrets I wasn't meant to hear. A chill filled my apartment. My instincts screamed that something was off. One night the lights stopped flickering. Suddenly, the silence felt oppressive. Just when I thought I could finally rest, my door creaked open. I hadn't even been asleep before I was standing in my living room, the cold air biting at my skin. The door was half open, swaying slowly. I hesitated. My heart raced, and I didn't know what to do. I took a step toward the door, driven by curiosity and fear. I wasn't sure I wanted to know what was outside. I pushed it wider and froze. At the bottom of the stairs stood a figure. They didn't move or speak. They just stared back at me. In that moment, I wanted to shout, to ask who they were, but I couldn't find my voice. All I could do was watch as my breath caught in my throat. Someone whispered my name, or maybe I imagined it. I realized then I was not alone. Something twisted inside me. I backed away slowly, but they didn't follow. The figure just stood there. I didn't know what they wanted or why they were there. I never learned. But that night, everything changed. The whispers didn't stop, and neither did the shadows. The small town I thought would save me turned into a nightmare I couldn't escape. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, curled up under a blanket, staring at the door like it might open again. The figure had vanished, but my mind replayed the moment over and over. What did they want? I was too scared to find out. The next day, I avoided looking at the door. Instead, I focused on work. I needed to drown out the noise of the whispers that lingered in my head. I thought about my graphic design job, how I could pour my uncertainty into art. But nothing came. My creativity felt trapped beneath a heavy layer of dread. After several hours of staring blankly at my screen, I decided to go for a walk. I hoped the fresh air would clear my mind. I made my way to the park, but even the sun felt dull. It was as if the shadows from my apartment still clung to me. As I wandered, I caught sight of a few children playing on the swings. Their laughter should have been comforting, but instead, it sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. I turned around, scanning the area, and that's when I saw her. A woman was standing near the edge of the park, her gaze fixed on my apartment building. Her clothes were old-fashioned, almost like she stepped out of a different time. She had a white dress that flowed around her ankles, and her hair was tied back in a loose braid. For a moment, our eyes locked, and my heartbeat quickened. Then she turned abruptly and walked away. I knew I had to find out more. Maybe she knew something about my neighbors. I hurried back to my apartment, ignoring the chill in the air. I grabbed my notes and decided to visit the town library. It felt like the only place where I could uncover the history behind this place. The library was small, but it was filled with stacks of old books and local records. I approached the librarian, a kind-looking woman with round glasses. "Can you help me find anything related to the history of this neighborhood?" I asked. She looked at me for a moment, her expression shifting from polite interest to something more guarded. "We have some archives in the back," she said slowly, leading me away from the main room. I could feel my excitement mixing with anxiety. In the back room, the air was thick with dust and stale paper. She showed me some files and left me to my search. Time passed as I flipped through pages of faded documents. Then I found a newspaper clipping from decades ago. The headline read, "Mysterious Disappearances Haunt Local Community." My throat went dry as I scanned the article. It spoke of families who vanished without a trace, allegations of shadows seen at night, and strange happenings in the neighboring buildings. The world felt like it was crashing in around me. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me, a soft whisper that seemed to drift through the room. I shivered, and when I turned around, the librarian was gone. The room felt darker, and I could no longer ignore the sense of dread creeping back. I needed to leave. Just as I was about to exit, the door slammed shut on its own. Panic clenched my chest. My heart raced as I pressed my back against the wall, trying to recall my footsteps. That was when I saw a shadow darting past the window. I was trapped, and the whispers grew louder. I pressed my palms against the cold surface of the door, desperate for it to budge. My breath came quick and shallow as the whispers buzzed around me like angry bees. I needed to calm down. I couldn't let panic take control, but it felt impossible. The room was heavy with something I couldn't identify, a weight that pressed down on my shoulders. Then, just as my thoughts spiraled, a soft scratching sound came from the corner of the room. I turned my head slowly, my heart pounding against my ribs. The shadows twisted, and I took a wary step forward. "Hello?" My voice was barely a whisper. The scratching continued, and I couldn't help myself. I walked toward it, drawn by a morbid curiosity. In that corner, an old filing cabinet stood slightly ajar. I felt the pull of something hidden inside. I gripped the handle and yanked it open. Inside were stacks of old files, similar to the ones I had been skimming through. I pulled out a folder marked with the name of a family, the ones mentioned in the article. The Morton family disappeared without a trace over 30 years ago. As I peered inside, a small photograph slipped out and fluttered to the ground. I picked it up, squinting at the faded image. It was a family portrait, a mom, dad, 2 children. Their smiles were bright, but something in the background caught my eye. In the upper corner, almost hidden by a tree, stood a figure cloaked in darkness. I felt a chill race down my spine. It was unmistakable, a shadowy shape with strikingly familiar features. Suddenly, the door rattled violently, snapping my attention back to the room. I jumped back, adrenaline flooding my senses. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice echoing in the dusty silence. But there was no reply. Only the silence that seemed to thicken like fog. Searching for an escape, I rushed to the door, but it held firm. That S when I felt it, cold fingers brushed against my arm. I spun around, certain that I was about to come face to face with whatever haunting was here. Instead, I found the librarian, standing in the doorway with wide eyes. "You shouldn't be here," she gasped, her voice now a panicked whisper. "You have to leave. They are not happy you're digging into this." "What do you mean?" I stammered, my confusion mingling with fear. "I can't explain it now, but you need to understand there's a reason for the disappearances," she said, taking a hesitant step into the room. "You've awakened something." Before I could respond, the whispers crescendoed, drowning out my thoughts. The librarian's expression changed from fear to alarm as shadows coalesced around us, swirling and thickening. I could hardly think straight. I stumbled back, my heart hammering in my chest. A sudden blinding light burst through the room. I shielded my eyes, a gasping breath caught in my throat. And then everything went dark. I jolted awake, gasping for air. The familiar smell of musty paper permeated the air, and I realized I was on the floor of the library. The librarian knelt beside me, her face pale with an urgency I couldn't quite comprehend. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern threading through her voice. Where am I?" I stammered, trying to gather my thoughts. The earlier panic felt like a distant memory, replaced now with confusion. "You passed out. We need to get out now." She helped me to my feet, and I could see the urgency etched into her features. I shook off the disorientation and followed her toward the door, but the whispers began again, louder and more insistent. "What is happening?" I begged, glancing back at the filing cabinet. It looked innocent enough, but I knew better now. "What did I awaken?" She hesitated, glancing around as if the shadows themselves were listening. "The Morton family, they vanished because of a ritual. It was said to connect this world to another, one filled with spirits that don't easily let go." I blinked at her, not fully understanding. "But why me? Why now?" "The files you've read, they were warnings. You have an affinity to these stories and ability to draw their attention. And when you opened that cabinet, you invited them in," she replied, urgency lacing her voice. Just then, the lights flickered, and the room felt colder. I shivered not just from the temperature but from the overwhelming sense of dread. "What do we do?" I asked, fear coiling tightly in my stomach. "We need to close the door, but this time, we have to do it properly. We need to finish what was started," she said, turning back toward the shadows that had begun to swirl again. "They won't just let us leave." I felt paralyzed as the whispers grew louder, almost forming words. I could barely comprehend what they were trying to say. I took a step back, my heart racing. "Finish what?" "There's a way to send them back. It involves the photograph, the one you found. It's a key." She moved quickly to the filing cabinet, reaching in for the folder that contained the portrait. I never thought this day would come. I thought we had time. I was frozen, staring at the shadows which now seemed to writhe and stretch toward us. They looked almost alive, reacting to our conversation. Whispers coiled around my neck like a tightening noose, their tones shifting from anxious to demanding. "Help me!" I shouted at the librarian, my voice trembling as I edged closer to her. Her hands trembled as she grasped the photograph, and then, with a deep breath, she turned to me. "We do this together. On 3, we say their names. We remind them that they no longer belong here." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "We can't just say their names. What if it makes it worse?" "It's our only option," she insisted. "We must reclaim the power they've taken." Okay, I whispered, willing myself to trust. 1, 2, 3. As we spoke the names, the room darkened, shadows elongating and twisting around us. The whispers morphed into anguished cries echoing through the confines of the library. I clenched my fists, feeling a surge of energy. Suddenly, I saw a flicker of light amidst the darkness. As it danced in front of us, I felt an unexpected resolve build inside. I wasn't just a bystander anymore. I was a part of this story too. But then, everything went silent. I looked at the librarian, and the fear in her eyes mirrored my own. Something was coming, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it was, it would change everything. The silence was cut by a faint crackling sound. I glanced to my right, where the shadows seemed to undulate, and realized they weren't just black. They were swirling, a deep, moving darkness that pulled at the edges of the room. I felt my heart pound in my ears. The librarian looked terrified. "We have to do it now," she urged, her voice high-pitched like a siren. I nodded, though doubt gnawed at me. What if this didn't work? What if it made everything worse? "Focus on the photograph," she instructed, holding it tightly. "It's a representation of their binding. If we can just—" She hesitated, glancing at the writhing shadows. "If we can just visualize what is happening, it might weaken their hold." I stared at the picture. The fading faces of the Morton family haunted me, their hollow eyes seeming to plead for help. "What do we visualize?" I questioned, feeling a chill crawl down my spine. "Imagine sending them away," she said urgently. "Imagine a door closing behind them, a return to where they came from." I could barely think. All I could hear were the whispers' voices clawing for attention, growing louder by the second. I clenched my fists around the edges of the photograph, trying to focus. Okay, we can do this. We tilted our heads back, voices steady as we began to chant again. I closed my eyes and pictured that door she mentioned, trying to fill my mind with an image of it swinging shut behind the Mortons. But as I chanted, the temperature dropped further. I gasped, feeling a sharp pinch on my arm. I opened my eyes just in time to see something, or someone, take shape. A figure emerged from the shadows, twisted and torn, mouthing words that didn't reach my ears. "Do you see that?" I shouted, my fear radiating outwards. The librarian's expression turned pale as her eyes darted frantically. "Keep going! Don't stop!" The figure moved closer, thrumming with anger and desperation, its features indistinct yet familiar. I remembered glimpses of the names we'd spoken, some parts of their story pieced together like a puzzle. "Help us!" Its voice echoed, both a plea and a snarl. "I can't," I stuttered, feeling like I might break under the weight of its despair. My voice faltered as doubts washed over me. Maybe we weren't meant to send them away. Maybe we were being drawn in. "Please!" the librarian urged me, shaking my shoulder. "Focus on the chant." But just then, the photograph flickered, a flash of light illuminating the gloom. I gasped and caught the sight of various scenes from the Morton family's past parties, laughter, life. Suddenly, I felt a rush of emotions, gratitude and sorrow mixing together. The air thickened, and the whispers surged. This time they melded into shouts, demanding attention, ripping at the boundaries of reality. That's when I saw it. A darker shape, creeping behind the figure, smirking as it watched us struggle. Whatever this presence was, it wasn't here to help. "What is that?" I shouted, pointing towards the silhouette. "I don't know," the librarian breathed, visibly shaken. "But it's not good." Panic coursed through me. We had opened something we couldn't control. I looked at her, desperation flooding my heart. "What if we can't send them back?" The librarian steeled herself. We couldn't hesitate, not now. The only way out was to confront this entity head-on. "Next, we bring the focus back to the ritual." "Focus on closure," she said, her voice stronger now. As I prepared to rejoin the chant, I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just a library anymore. It was a battleground, and whatever stood against us had no intention of letting either of us win. The chanting grew louder, rising above the chaos around us. I felt trapped between the yearning of the figures and the dark force lurking just behind them. My breath quickened, doubt threatened to unravel me entirely. "Focus on the door," the librarian yelled, her eyes wide with fear. "Picture it closing." I strained to imagine that door again, but the sight of the dark shape behind the figure distracted me. It moved like smoke, coiling and curling, its presence suffocating. Whatever it was, it thrived on fear. What if the door isn't enough? I shouted, my voice shaky. What if it wants to come through? Just trust the process. She shouted back, gripping the photo tighter. The librarian took a step forward, her determination conflicting with the terror seeping into the room. Then something shifted. The whispering voices transformed. They rose into a cacophony of shrieks, each one more desperate than the last. The shadows intensified, swirling faster, forming faces, horrified expressions pleading for release. "Make it stop!" I cried, feeling hope slip away. The entity's smirk twisted into something cruel, almost savoring our panic. "Stay with me," the librarian commanded, her grip on the photograph unyielding. "We must keep the chant going." I closed my eyes for a moment. The tears threatened to spill over, but I couldn't let fear take me. I thought of the family in the picture, how they once lived, loved, and laughed. I visualized that door again and concentrated hard. This time, I imagined it not just closing but sealing shut, locking away the anguish. "I see them!" I shouted, feeling a flicker of connection. Their smiling faces returned, briefly drowned out by the shadows. "They want that. They need that." The librarian matched my energy, her voice rising with fervor. "Now! Picture the light! Picture hope! I could feel the temperature shift. A warmth began to spread at our feet, growing higher like a wave crashing over those shadows. The dark figure reeled back, as if burned. Then, without warning, the room jolted. The photograph vibrated violently in her hands. I opened my eyes just as the dark shadow lunged, reaching for us. It was now or never. Close the door, I screamed, pouring everything I had into the chant. In a wild surge of desperation, I envisioned that door slamming tight against the darkness, sealing it away from us forever. A blinding light erupted from the photograph, engulfing everything around us. But just as I thought we might succeed, the dark figure lunged forward one last time. I felt something snatch my wrist, and a jolt of icy fear snaked up my arm. Then everything went dark. I gasped, plunging into an abyss where time and space felt twisted. I struggled to breathe, panic clawing at my chest. Where was the librarian? Had we failed? And then, a whisper reached my ears, soft yet chilling. You shouldn't have come here. The shadows threatened to swallow me whole as I desperately called out, What are you? But answers evaded me, and that ominous voice only grew louder. I could feel its breath, like ice against my neck, as I sank deeper into the unknown. I was lost in darkness, consumed by an empty void. My heart raced, pounding in my ears. I gasped for air, but it felt thick and heavy, like I was drowning in a deep lake. I couldn't see anything, yet I felt the oppressive weight of shadows pressing in around me. The whisper echoed again, clearer this time. You shouldn't have come here. There was a pause, then a chilling laugh that sent shivers racing down my spine. I couldn't decipher where the voice was coming from, or if it was even close. All I knew was that I had to escape this malevolent presence. Help! Someone! I shouted, but the sound swallowed itself. I was utterly alone. My hands reached out, searching for anything tangible, but only met the cold, empty air. Then, out of nowhere, a flicker of light appeared. It was faint, but it shone like a distant star. I darted towards it, adrenaline surging through me. The light grew brighter, and I pushed my way through the darkness, my resolve hardening against the fear clawing at me. I stumbled forward, panic and hope battling for dominance. The whispering voices returned, but they sounded different now, more frantic. It was as if they were warning me away from that beacon. Turn back. They echoed, but it only fueled my determination. As I closed in on the light, blurry images emerged from the shadows. I recognized shapes that looked familiar. It was the family from the photograph, their expressions twisted with grief and despair. They were reaching out to me, their hands stretched towards the light, as if it could pull them through. Help them! I wanted to scream, but my voice was swallowed by the abyss. I took another breath, forcing my mind to focus. The librarian's instructions flooded back. Picture hope. So I clung to that image of the door, envisioning it clearer than before. The warmth around my feet surged again, battling off the shadows. Stay with me! I shouted, attempting to summon any strength I could muster. The family in the picture began to fade in the bright light, their faces morphing from pain to relief. My heart ached. I wanted to reach out to them, but as soon as I thought I could, they disappeared into the brilliance. The warmth faded too, replaced by an icy chill that sank into my bones. When I saw it, the dark figure loomed in the corner of the light. Its eyes glinted like shards of obsidian, fixating directly on me. The laughter echoed again, more malicious than ever. You won't save them, it hissed, the sound a crawled sensation across my skin. I couldn't let panic take hold. Instead, a fierce anger burned within me. I can't let you win! I shouted defiantly. The shadows recoiled slightly, and with that surge of defiance, the light intensified, shooting outwards. In that chaotic moment, a blinding wave knocked against me, and I was thrown backward, hitting the invisible barrier of darkness. Just before everything went dark again, I could see the outline of the door I had conjured. No! I screamed, my voice barely above a whisper. And just like that, the darkness swallowed me again, but I felt a thread of something, a connection begin to pull me back toward the light. Was it hope? Desperation? Either way, I wasn't done fighting yet. The darkness clung to me, suffocating, but the pull of the light grew stronger, a lifeline woven from sheer will. Just as I thought I'd lose myself again, a sense of clarity washed over me. I wasn't meant to surrender. The family, those twisted faces, haunted my mind, and I had to find a way to break through. Concentrate, I commanded myself, trying to summon the strength to push back against the shadows. In the heart of the darkness, I sensed the energy of the light. It thrummed and buzzed, calling to me like a lost friend. I reached into that glow, stretching out my hands, imagining the warmth wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. Suddenly, the chilling laugh broke through once more. You think you can save them? The figure slithered closer, and with it, the shadows surged. Fear shot through me, but I held on to my anger. You don't own me. A surge of light flickered in response. I felt the warmth wrapping around my fingers. Hope was rising again. I focused on the door, picturing it more vividly than before. I willed it into existence. Then everything shifted. The shadows shuddered, pulling back ever so slightly. I felt the ground beneath me tremble as if it could sense my newfound determination. Somehow, we were locked in this desperate battle, the figure and me. It wanted to drag me back into the depths, but I refused. I took another step toward the light. I can do this, I yelled, and to my surprise my voice echoed back, stronger this time. The whispers changed, morphing from warnings to panicked cries. Flee! Flee! They howled, and that was when I knew I was getting closer. But before I could rejoice, a jagged piece of darkness lunged at me, slicing through the air. I instinctively ducked, feeling the cold wind rush over me. Stop! I roared, allowing my anger to fuel the light. It burst forth, bathing me in its brilliance, and pushing the shadows back. At that moment, I spotted something glinting in the light, something small. I reached for it, grasping a silver locket, its surface smooth and cool against my palm. It felt familiar, and a sense of destiny stirred within me. I had to find out who it belonged to. As I turned it over, a vision flared in my mind. Flashes of the family from the photograph, laughing, loving, and then their faces twisted with sorrow. I gasped, remembering the emotions etched onto their features. They weren't just spirits trapped, they were connected to this locket, to the darkness surrounding me. No! I cried out, understanding flooding through me. Whatever had happened to them bound them here, and as long as this darkness existed, they would never be free. But just then, that dark figure shifted, rage burning in its eyes as it charged toward me. You shouldn't have found that! It shrieked. Desperation clawed at my throat. I needed to escape, but I couldn't leave without the family. The shadows surrounded me again, icy fingers closing in. My heart raced as I clutched the locket tightly. Would it be enough? Everything went silent. Then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, the darkness was gone, replaced by a blinding brightness. I squinted, trying to adjust to the stark light. I was lying on the ground in a field, the scent of grass cutting through the remnants of fear. Confusion wrapped around me like a thick fog. Where was I? Sitting up, I noticed the locket still clasped in my hand. It shimmered in the sunlight, and for a moment, I forgot my dread. But as I looked around, the world felt different. The vibrancy of the colors seemed too bright, almost unreal. A sound drew my attention: laughter. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding. I followed the sound, my gut twisting. It led me to a clearing where children played. They flew kites, their faces pure joy. A woman sat on a picnic blanket, laughing, while a man made silly faces at the kids. It was a picture of happiness I thought I had lost forever. But when I looked closer, my heart sank. The woman looked exactly like the figure in the photograph from the locket. The resemblance was uncanny. "Who are you?" I whispered, a chill creeping down my spine. Suddenly, one of the kids wandered over, a little girl with bright eyes. She picked at the flowers nearby, her innocent giggles mixed with the warm breeze. "Hi!" she chirped, but there was something unsettling about her gaze. It felt too knowing. Where is this place? I asked, my voice shaking slightly. She tilted her head, considering me. You're not supposed to be here, she said softly, a hint of worry creeping into her voice. Before I could ask more, the laughter faded. The clearing began to warp, shadows stretching across the ground like long fingers reaching out to pull me back. Fear coursed through me again. The vibrant color drained from the scene, replaced with the darker tones I was so desperate to escape. No! Not again! I shouted, panic rising. The girl's expression turned serious. You need to leave, she urged, and I felt the urgency in her tone. The pleasant landscape melted away under the weight of encroaching shadows. I turned to run, the locket clutched like a shield. But every step I took felt heavy, as if the ground tried to hold me in place. Just as I broke into a sprint, I heard the chilling laugh echo behind me once more. Did you really think you could escape? The dark figure's voice slithered through the air, making my skin crawl. There was a rustle behind me, and I caught a glimpse of the woman, her eyes filled with a mix of concern and fear. Help us! She shouted, her voice slicing through the darkness. I didn't stop. I could feel the darkness closing in, desperate to reclaim me. Wait! No! I yelled, but the shadows snatched at my ankles, dragging me back into their depths. I was falling again. Then, just as all hope seemed lost and the laugh echoed ominously, my fingers tightened around the locket. It pulsed with warmth, a lightning strike of clarity igniting in my mind. I had to remember who I was fighting for. When I hit the ground, something shifted. My hands pressed against the cool earth, and I felt a surge of energy. The darkness faltered for a moment. I could see faces flashing in my mind, fragments of joy twisted with grief. I had to break the cycle. Then everything went silent again. And that's when I saw it. The familiar figure of the librarian stood before me, but she was no longer the terrified woman I had left in that dismal library. The shadows around her were pushed back, her expression now resolute. You have to harness that anger, she shouted, her voice breaking through the suffocating silence. I don't know how, I screamed, feeling the weight of despair pressing down on me once more. The dark figure writhed behind her, its intentions unmistakable. The locket, it's a key, she insisted, gesturing toward it. I squeezed the locket tightly, willing the warmth within to flourish. Think of the joy, of the love, the family's light. Remember who they were before this darkness ensnared them. Desperate, I closed my eyes and focused on their faces, the happy memories I had glimpsed in that photograph. I pictured them laughing together, alive in a sun-soaked evening, free of fear. As I concentrated, a warmth surged through me, radiating from the locket. Slowly, I felt the shadows retreat, their grasp loosening. The dark figure roared in frustration, trying to encroach upon my newfound strength. As the warmth intensified, I became aware of my surroundings morphing again. I saw the children, the Morton children. They were playful spirits, flickering between laughter and sorrow, and my heart ached for them. You can find peace, I cried out, directing my focus toward them. The shadows began to bend and shriek, caught in the push and pull of my resolve. I imagined the locket as a beacon, one that would draw the family together, giving them the strength to resist the darkness. You don't own them, I shouted, my voice unwavering. Their story isn't over. You can't keep them here. With those words, energy pulsed through me, and light flooded the space, spreading outward like a shockwave. I felt the pressure of the darkness, squeezing and clawing at my resolve. Cries echoed from the shadows, voices of desperate spirits, but the warmth of the locket enveloped me and urged me to hold strong. A brilliant light enveloped the dark figure, pushing back against the tendrils of blackness that twisted like smoke around me. Leave them, I cried, feeling the locket vibrate fiercely. As I focused harder on the love and laughter, visions of the family began to swirl around me, and I urged them to break free of their shackles. The dark figure shuddered violently, its form flickering between shapes. I could hear the family's whispers intertwining with the cacophony of dread, their voices rising together in a chorus of forgotten joy. We are more than this darkness, I shouted. And then, a glimpse of light, a door of shimmering brilliance broke through the shadows. With a final surge of will, I unleashed the energy I had harnessed, envisioning the door swinging wide. Go now! I urged, planting that picture firmly in my mind. A blinding bright light exploded around us, shadows recoiling in horror. The dark figure screamed, shrilling in rage as the light engulfed it, folding over itself in terror. The family was drawn toward the light, faces etched in relief, and I saw them nearing the door I had conjured. As the darkness faded, I felt something shift inside of me, a release. I collapsed to my knees, breathless. For a moment, I could see the family standing together across the threshold of the door, replaying their last moments of laughter. The world around them brightened, and before it disappeared, they nodded in gratitude. But as everything faded, deep questions echoed through my mind. Had I really sent them away? Was this a true escape or merely a passage to the unknown? The ground beneath me shook, and shadows threatened to rise again, forcing me to wonder about their true nature. And just as quickly as the bright light had filled the space, it vanished. I found myself back in the park, where laughter danced in the air, and kids still played on the swings. The warmth of the sun shone upon my back, but unease settled in my stomach. I turned and looked back at my apartment, and the sense of foreboding lingered. Had I truly ended their torment, or had I merely opened another door? I moved away in the days that followed, leaving the two-story building and its secrets behind. Sometimes, late at night, I still saw flickering lights through my new bedroom window, but I never looked too closely. A part of me still feels a phantom weight, the unknown shadows lurking just out of reach. I moved to another city, seeking solace and inspiration for my graphic design work, but every now and then, I'd catch myself wondering about the story I couldn't finish, the pieces still lost in the darkness. Did they find peace in the light? Or were they still trapped in a world woven between shadows and whispers, their fate forever entwined with mine? I suppose I'll never truly know.